All right. As I promised, aloha, ohana, as I promised, I would make a recording of the in-class activity that we did. And so here we go. I downloaded the file. The data originally came from our world and data. I grabbed something that might be interesting to look at. If you go through, let's see, how to my mouse over here. Hold this over here, make it easier to work with. So I opened up this file, and you'll notice that if you look down here, there's a bunch of tabs or worksheets you can click on. If you were to you can click on any one of these, and that moves around to different worksheets that have different information on it. A couple things I'll point out. You'll notice that when I annotate, that disappears. You'll notice that if I select a cell, there's a green highlight wherever I select. That's a cell I'm working in. Whatever the contents of that cell, you could think of Excel like being a big filing cabinet or a bunch of shelves with a bunch of bins you can put things in. If I select this bin, the one that's highlighted, you notice the contents are in this formula bar. The formula bar is right here. And one of the options you can do with a formula bar is you can, if you don't like the size of it, you can move the arrow, you can move it up and down, you can shrink it, or you can make it larger. You don't have very much content in there, whatever size is fine. A couple things I like to point out too. If you look at the top of the worksheet, you'll see a whole bunch of letters, A, B, C, D, and it goes all the way down to X, F, D. So after A, B, C, D, at the end of the letters, it goes A, B, and so on. If it's a letter, it's a column. And if it's a row, you'll see a whole bunch of numbers. So here's 1, 2, 3, 12, and so on. That can tell you exactly where you are. So if I select this cell, I'm at C7. That means I'm at column C, row 7. And you'll notice right here, there's a name bar or name field, and that indicates what cell I'm at. So what happens if I move to a different cell? Now I'm at A5. It says A5 instead of C7. If you want to save a file, whatever it is you're working on, you use this button up here. You can see that. That will save things. You can, if you click on, let's talk a little bit about ribbons. The ribbons are up here. If you can click on each one of those and you can do different things. For example, I click on File. If I can do a save as something, if I was working on an Excel file, I don't know what happened to it. I go here, look at the recent files, and there are all sorts of Excel files that I opened up previously. You can identify. There's the home is where you'll find most of your basic things you'll use. There's other ribbons which have all sorts of fancy things. We'll go into more detail and later lessons on how to use a lot of things, like, for example, making graphs, making visualizations, doing a bunch of formulas and things like that. But for now, let's start looking at this file. This has a whole bunch of countries, and I copied some of the countries' data into these additional worksheets. Now, if I want to look at the change in height from one period of time to the next, the percent change, the formula is the difference between the two divided by the first. So to do that, I could write equals 160, we put parentheses, we want order of operations here. 166.3 minus 165.5 and divided by 165.5. And that will work. That'll give me a correct answer. And so that looks like 0.00483, or that's about half of 1%, 0.48%. But that would take a lot of typing. One of the beautiful things about Excel is that you can do lots of calculations in a hurry. In fact, we'll even devote some lecture time to writing formulas at a later lesson this semester. If I want to write just a formula, where I wrote that in, you'll notice in the formula bar, I can either click up in here, or I can click in the cell itself, and that will give me what I need to be able to write. So I'm going to click in the formula bar. Either way, I'm going to delete that. Formulas always start with equals. So I'll put a parenthesis, the current minus the previous divided by the previous. So in this case, it happens to be D3 minus D2, all divided by D2. And I've got the parentheses in there because I want order of operations or PEMDAS. And that will give me the percent change of height between two different years. I hit enter, and that formula will take. And there are a couple of ways. If I want to copy this formula all the way down, I can type it out every single time. And you know, if Friday night's really boring, I don't have anything planned, maybe I'll do that. But if I got other things, people I need to see, places I need to go, maybe you want to use one of these Excel shortcuts. The selected cell has a little green box in the bottom right-hand corner. Left, if you click on that with your mouse, there's a couple things you can do. One is you can drag that down, and that will copy that formula all the way down. The other thing you can do is if you double-click it, it will copy that all the way down, everywhere you need to go, as far as you need, as far as there's data to the left of it. And I'll show you a little shortcut you can use with Excel. I'm going to right click. If you right click, you'll get a whole bunch of these menu options that are really cool. Some things you might often use, it's right there at the tip of your fingers. So I right clicked, I'm going to hit copy. And once it's copied, you'll see these little green arrow things. So it looks like a little conveyor belt going around the selected cell. I'm going to go over to from Portugal over to China, other side of the world. And right here, I'm going to right click and I'll paste. I'll just do the very first one. Or you can also do Control P. And now I've got that same formula. If I want to copy it all the way down, I'll just double click, bottom right-hand corner, bam, got the whole thing. And I can do this too. I can just copy that whole selection. I did a command Control C that copies everything. I'll go over to the Philippines and I'll just paste it. And that gives me everything. Oh, it'll give me more than I needed. I'm going to delete that. So now I've got, this is a really quick way to copy all these formulas over. If you want to, if you don't like the default font, which is usually Calibri, personally, I don't really like that one very much. Maybe I want to change the font. I'll select whatever cells I want to change the font with. And while I'm in the home ribbon, up here, I can change the font. I can change the font size. And maybe I'll want to even change what type of a format the number is. You can do that here, or you can right click. Either one of those. There's Excel, usually there's multiple ways to get to the same thing. But let me change the font size. So I have those all selected. I'll give it, I'm just going to pick one randomly. How about stencil? Oh, that doesn't look very nice either. But the font's different depending on your intended audience. Maybe the person who contracted you is paying you lots of money because they really want everything in stencil. So anyways, that's how you change it to stencil. Change it to whatever font size you want. And I'm going to make this a little bit wider so you can see those numbers better. If you want to turn these into a percent, up here, you've got, let's see, let's annotate. There we go. Up here, you can click on this thing. You can change the decimal as much as you want with that. So I'm going to change this to, I'll change that one to a percentage, but then I'll give it some more decimals. Oops, that made it so you can't see it. Now you can see it. Or if you just want to change it back, you click on general, that goes back. So there's a little bit about formatting as well. If you don't like something you did, Control Z will undo it. And so Control Z is undo, and it will keep track of about 100 iterations of undo. You could also, in addition to the Control Z, the other thing you can do is right up here, that's undo. Just next to the right of it is redo. If you want to go, if you undo something, you don't like it, and you want to redo it again, well, you have that option. But I can undo all of these, however many times I did it, and it will make it back to where it was before. Okay, so there's a little bit. Oh, yeah. Let's look at this. One of your answers in there is percent change of Filipino men from 1880 to 1890. And I'm going to make that bold, make it a bigger font. But there's the answer. Now, the other part of the exercise we did in class is if you were to invest $10,000 at 5%. Oh, actually, one more thing. I think there's a question they're asking about averages. So I'm going to go here. I'll select all of these heights. If you look in Excel, the default setting right here, oh, not that far, just right here. Right here has some statistics for you already. And if you were to right click, if you were to right click one of these, you've got all these other things that you could do: average count, numerical count, that only counts numbers instead of just how many cells have content in it, minimum, maximum. When I set up my computer, usually I'll add minimum, maximum too. But anyway, do it set up however you want. But the default settings are to have the average, count, sum. So I selected all the US heights, and now we can see the average is 173.2764706. It gives you what that average is already. Okay, so there's one little overview. Handy trick where you can answer somebody's question immediately and they'll think you're really smart. Well, you are, but you'll have that answer right there at your fingertips. So let's look at this other part of this exercise. I'm going to invest $10,000 at 5%. Let's set this up. I'm going to write year. So a couple ways I can do this. I can go ahead and just put 10,000, and then Excel thinks, okay, you put a number in there, doesn't know what to do with it. I can come up here and right where it says general, I can drop this down, turn it into a currency. Now it looks like a number. The other thing I can do is then select a cell. I'm going to go ahead and write a $, 10,000. And now it recognizes that if you look in the formula bar, you notice it just has that number, but it has it formatted correctly because Excel keeps trying to guess what you want. Oh, actually, I need to add year, don't I? But Excel does a really good job at trying to guess what you're trying to do. I'm going to start over again. I'm going to put year first. That was part of the first part. I think we do principal or something else like that. So let's start off with 2023. Oh, I don't like that. I'm going to turn it back to just a generic year. If you put 2024, that's a lot of typing. I mean, really, I could write a formula to add a year, but I'll show you another thing you can do. If you pick at least two values, 2023, 2024, now I'm going to grab the bottom right-hand corner and drag it all the way down, and it will try to predict what you want. It's pretty cool. So I got down to 2037. And if I look over here, count at 15, that means I'm going out 15 years. So good, that's what I wanted. And so what's that year at 15 years later? 2037. So we got 15 years worth of data. The principal, we put in $10,000. That's what we start off with. If we get a 5% return on our investment, there's a couple of ways we can do this. We want to click on the cell above, and you can multiply it by 1.05, which is the same amount plus 5%. The other thing you can do, Excel's pretty handy, it's smart, it tries to figure out what you're trying to do. You can do 105%. So you're at 105% from what you had the previous year. I'll hit enter, so the formula takes. And now that shows, okay, that's nice. We've got a 5% increase for 1 year, but we want to know what it's going to be like after 15 years. And so I'm not going to select both these cells. If I do, what's going to happen? It's going to get really confused because that's a number and that's a formula. So do a number, formula, and that's not really what I wanted to do. I want to copy just the formula. So I'll select the cell with the formula, double click, bam, right there, 2037, we have $19,799. And maybe I want to look at pennies too, because that might be important. Maybe not. But anyways, that gives you something a little bit more accurate. So how much money, how much of an increase, what's our return on investment of 5% if we drop down $10,000 at a 5% increase? I'm going to write a formula for that. I'll take that cell and I'll subtract that cell, and that gives me the difference. So about $9,800 with the 15-year investment. And I've got all these other things. Might be a little complicated, but let's do the more simple version. I think this is one I did in class. Rather than following all the instructions and the explanation, I think this will be sufficient. So if I want to do, let's look at inflation. You remember when you were a kid and you bought a popsicle or a candy bar or something at a store, you spent a bunch of money. If you go to that same store today, the price probably won't be exactly the same. It'll be more. Most places in the world experience some form of inflation. Depending on where you are in the world, some places have deflation, but that's pretty rare. So that $10,000 we invest in the United States, inflation tends to run about 3% on average. But let's put, oh, I don't want percent, I want dollars. So I got $10,000, and actually I'll show you a little shortcut. I'm just going to copy this formula, Control C, and then I'll paste it here, Control V, or you can right click, work your magic that way. However you work your magic, that'll work. Or I'll just write the formula, equals that divide, or not divide, I want times 103%, because there's a 3% average increase in inflation. And so that means if you had $10,000 and it only made the same amount as inflation did, after 15 years, you'd have about 15 grand. And so so this will help us figure out how much of a real investment we have, or how much of a real return we're looking at, our purchasing power. So we can buy the same number of lollipops or candy bars or bags of rice or cars or houses or whatever it is we're purchasing with our money. What is the true value of that adjusted for inflation, which we call real value? So I'm just going to take the difference between the two, that cell minus that one, and that will give me, so really the true amount of return on investment for that $10,000 is about $4,600. So I'll get about half of it back. It looks like double because prices all went up, but if you're accounting for the increase in prices, the real return on investment is about almost $4,700. Well, great. I hope this video helped and that you were able to, and if you were to open up the Excel file, you can do all that stuff and hopefully learn a couple things about Excel. We're going to be going into a lot more detail about a lot of those functions, a lot of those steps that we just did throughout this semester. And I think one thing I'll do at the very end of the semester, when we do our exam review, we'll open this up and you'll find how fast you can do that. It'll be pretty amazing.